Why does your entire day feel off before it's even started? What if your morning chaos isn't random but a warning? And what if a few small choices could flip it all around? Let's be brutally honest, most of us don't wake up with purpose. We wake up overwhelmed. And no, that's not just a bad habit. It's a warning sign. Because how you begin your morning silently shapes how the rest of your day unfolds. If the first thing you do is scroll, stress, react. Don't be surprised when everything feels like it's spiraling. The truth is, most of us are already running on empty before we even leave the house. Not because we're weak, not because we're lazy, but because no one ever taught us how to start strong. That's the problem. When your mind wakes up in survival mode, the rest of the day becomes damage control. You're constantly catching up, reacting, spinning. The Stoics understood this long ago. They believed that how you greet the morning is how you face the world. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." But here's the thing. You can't become that person if your day begins with digital clutter and emotional noise. If your mornings feel like a race you never signed up for, heart pounding, mind spinning, stress already boiling before your feet even hit the floor, you're not just tired, you're misaligned. And that tight churn in your gut, that's not just a rough morning. That's a signal, a red flag, a clear message. Your day is already slipping out of your hands. The worst part, you normalize it. You tell yourself, that's just life. But it's not. It's the silent killer of momentum. Because when your first thoughts are soaked in stress and noise, you carry that energy with you. It stains every conversation, every text, every decision, every move you make. So let's drop the mask. Let's stop pretending we're crushing it. Because the truth, most of us wake up and hit snooze. We scroll through junk. We check emails we didn't ask for. We fall into a fog of distraction before we've even stood up straight. And by the time we're vertical, we're already behind. The day is dragging us around. Instead of us leading it, sound familiar? It's not that you're undisciplined. It's that your morning has no momentum, and that early chaos. It's like pouring dirty fuel into a high-performance machine. Of course you feel heavy. Of course everything feels like a grind. But here's the twist. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're just a few small, deliberate shifts away from flipping the script entirely. Because a handful of intentional rituals, they can take you from scattered to focused, from drifting to driven, from exhausted to fully lit up. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So if your mornings have been working against you, let's talk about how to take them back. Your chaotic mornings aren't just obstacles. They're invitations. As Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So if anything in this message feels like it's hitting close to home, if the mindset we're building together here resonates with you, do one simple, free thing. Hit that subscribe button. Don't skip around. Don't miss a piece. Because this isn't just a video, it's a reset. Stay with me. Because by the end of this, your morning won't just start better. It will start working for you. Let's dive in. It's strange, isn't it? How the very first moment of your day before you said a single word can quietly determine everything that comes next. But it does. Your morning doesn't begin with movement. It begins with mindset. And that's where the problem lies. Most of us are waking up straight into reaction mode. Noise, notifications, obligations we never even agreed to. Our feet touch the floor, but our minds are already chasing the day. And right there, in that tiny, nearly invisible crack between unconscious sleep and conscious wakefulness, you're presented with your first real decision. Will you lead your morning, or will you let it lead you? When the alarm rings, it's not just an alert, it's a crossroads. Do you grab your phone and immediately dive into other people's priorities? Do you scroll, compare, stress before you've even taken your first breath? Or do you pause, do you inhale deeply, check in with yourself, and listen inward before the noise gets in? That pause, that simple 5 seconds of self-awareness, might just be the most powerful moment of your day. Because how you enter the world shapes how you move through it. The Stoic philosopher Seneca said, If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. In other words, if you don't choose your direction from the start, don't be surprised when the day feels scattered, rushed, or completely off course. And here's something most people don't realize. Psychologically, your mind is incredibly suggestible in those first few moments after waking. The thoughts, emotions, and self-talk you allow in become the lens through which your brain filters the rest of the day. So if your first input is stress or panic or distraction, that becomes your baseline. But if you begin with something different, something as simple as a question like, how do I want to feel today? Then everything starts to change. So when you begin your day by asking, how do I want to feel today? You're not just asking a question, you're giving your mind a compass. This isn't about being idealistic, it's about being intentional. Saying, I want to feel focused, I want to move with calm. I want to respond, not react. You feed your brain a story, a direction. And like a loyal assistant, your mind begins aligning your actions to match that narrative. Carl Jung once said, you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. But here's the connection. What you do begins with what you believe. And what you believe is shaped by what you give your attention to, especially in those first quiet moments after waking. Starting your morning with intention doesn't require a full lifestyle overhaul. You don't need to rise at 4 a.m. You don't have to meditate on a mountaintop in absolute stillness. It's far simpler and far more powerful than that. It's the act of choosing your inner posture before taking your first external step. Because the moment your eyes open, the clock starts ticking. But not just for your schedule, for your state of mind. Those first few minutes aren't just the start of the day, they're the template. Like setting the tone in the opening scene of a film, the mood you establish in the first 10 minutes becomes the rhythm your brain tries to match for the rest of the day. Start in a rush, you stay scattered. Start with intention, you move with quiet power. Yet most of us give that moment away. We hand it over to headlines, to messages, to chaos that doesn't even belong to us. And then we wonder why our minds feel exhausted before noon. But what if you didn't? What if, instead of immediately plugging into the outside world, you plugged into yourself? Just 10 minutes. That's all it takes. 10 minutes to breathe, to stretch. To write one clear sentence in a journal, not for Instagram, but for clarity. Light a candle if that grounds you. Sit in silence if that brings you peace. Or simply place your feet on the ground and whisper to yourself, I'm here. I'm alive. I'm choosing. That kind of presence, it's rare. But it's also magnetic, and it's powerful. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius used his mornings to prepare himself for life's inevitable turbulence. He reminded himself that people would test him. That frustration, chaos, and disruption were part of the human experience. But he also reminded himself he had control over how he responded. And that reminder, it came before the world had a chance to reach for him. That's the move. You respond to yourself first, before reacting to everything else. From a psychological perspective, this isn't just a productivity tip, it's cognitive conditioning. What you practice in those early moments primes your subconscious, and your subconscious, it runs far more of your day than you realize. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But what if you stopped avoiding? What if, for just 10 minutes a day, you sat with it? Face the quiet, instead of fleeing it. You don't need a complex, perfectly curated morning ritual. You don't need a sacred altar or a checklist of habits to feel optimized. What you need is intention. Maybe that looks like writing down your top priority for the day. Maybe it's stretching out the tightness in your back. Maybe it's sipping your coffee slowly, instead of chugging it like you're racing into a 5-alarm fire. These may sound small, but they're not. They are acts of sovereignty. Tiny revolutions of reclaiming your mental real estate before the world builds on it. Think of those first 600 seconds like the ignition of a high-performance engine. You don't slam the gas before it's warm. You ease in. You let the machine stabilize. And once you do, your momentum becomes unstoppable. And when you do all of this, when you slow down, set your intention, and align your mind first thing in the morning, the performance speaks for itself. Your day doesn't feel better because you did more. It feels better because you did less on purpose. Less reacting, less scrambling, less noise. Most people wake up and immediately brace for battle. Their first thoughts are filled with dread. Deadlines, difficult conversations, unfinished tasks. The mind shifts into defense mode before their feet even hit the ground. It's like walking into the day already expecting to lose. But here's a truth you may have never heard. Your mind doesn't just follow your body follows your mind, which means that very first image you feed your brain in the morning holds incredible power. It doesn't just set the tone, it influences your confidence, your decisions, even your outcomes. That's not hype, that's how the brain works. Here's where it gets even more interesting. Your brain, especially your subconscious, cannot tell the difference between something vividly imagined and something experienced in real life. That's why elite athletes visualize themselves scoring before they ever touch the ball. Why world-class performers rehearse the applause before they step on stage. Because when you imagine yourself doing something successfully, your brain treats that image as if it's already happened. It starts preparing for it, not as a dream, but as a memory in the making. This isn't wishful thinking, it's neuroscience. It's the foundation of what psychologists call mental rehearsal. And when you practice it, even for a few quiet moments in the morning, you begin programming your brain to chase the outcome you've already seen. The key is to engage all your senses, visualize the scene, feel the moment, hear the sounds, see the confirmation email. Picture the version of you who's already done the work, already showed up, already followed through. You're not running from reality. You're shaping it. The Stoics knew this power, too. They practiced premeditation to mentally prepare for adversity. Seneca called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. He imagined the worst, not to suffer twice, but to reduce its power, to be ready, to respond, not react. But what if you applied the same wisdom in reverse? What if you premeditated success? Not to hype yourself up, but to normalize it in your mind. What if you visualized achievement so clearly and so consistently that it no longer felt like a fluke when you finally got there? Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." That's exactly what visualization is, a practice of waking up your internal compass before the world has a chance to distract it. You're not waiting for success to knock on your door. You're preparing to meet it. And the mental blueprint you build in those early morning moments, that becomes your map. A map your subconscious will begin following as your day unfolds. So tomorrow morning, don't just roll out of bed and roll straight into autopilot. Pause, sit still, close your eyes. Pick one goal, just one, not a whole to-do list. Just the one thing that matters most to you. Now visualize it vividly. See yourself already there. Hear the steady confidence in your voice. Watch how you move focused, certain. Feel the lightness that comes with follow-through, the calm that follows clarity. The more detail, the better. The more emotion you bring into that vision, the more powerful it becomes. Because this is how you prime your mind, not for fantasy, but for intention. You're training your system to respond with action, not with automatic reaction. Let's get something straight. Motivation is wildly overrated. Most people sit around waiting for it, like it's some divine spark that's going to strike them out of the blue. They say, "I'll move when I feel inspired," or "I'll start when I'm ready." But here's the truth most never learn. That moment rarely comes. Because motivation isn't the starter. It's the result. The truth is, action comes first. Not a grand, dramatic action, just movement. Just a flicker of effort. One push dash up ... one stretch. One slow lap around the block while the sun is still low and the world is quiet. And that changes everything. Your body leads your mind more often than you think. You move, and something shifts. Your blood starts flowing. Your breath deepens. Your brain, still foggy from sleep, begins to clear. It's not about intensity, it's about initiation. You're sending a signal, a cue to your nervous system that says, "We're awake now, we're on." And that signal isn't just physical, it triggers mental alignment. It calls your thoughts into formation. It settles your emotions, it lifts your energy. Suddenly, the thing that felt overwhelming an hour ago, now it feels manageable. Not easy, but possible. The Stoics talked about this often. The power of taking action, of doing, instead of waiting, of moving, instead of overthinking. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And that strength, it's not found in endless planning or mental spirals. It's found in those quiet early moments. When you move before your doubts wake up, because doubt is patient. It waits for hesitation. It thrives in stillness. The second you pause, it fills that space with reasons not to try. But when you act first, when you move before the excuses can form, you rob doubt of its fuel. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists, and the longer you resist that first step, the heavier it becomes." But here's the beautiful truth. Resistance isn't a wall, it's a fog. And fog disappears the moment you walk into it. That's why the first few minutes of movement in your morning aren't just about health, they're psychological warfare. They clear the fog, they remind you day after day that you don't need to feel ready to begin, you just need to begin. And no, this isn't about becoming an athlete. This isn't about pushing for personal bests, it's about one thing: intention. Maybe it's 15 push-ups before your shower, PC hun, a simple stretch on the floor, a walk with your dog phone on airplane mode. The what doesn't matter nearly as much as the consistency. Because what matters is that you moved. You chose motion over hesitation. You reminded yourself, you're in charge. Your excuses don't run the show, you do. And every time you choose discipline over delay, you reclaim a piece of your power. That discipline compounds. Day by day, step by step, choice by choice. Until one day, what once felt heavy becomes your new baseline. You wake up, you move, you lead, and your day follows the rhythm you set. You know the voice I'm talking about. The one inside your head that never stops talking. It narrates your day, judges your choices, reminds you of past failures, and starts doubting you. Before you've even had your coffee. Let me be clear. You're not crazy, you're human. That voice, it's always there. The real question is, who's writing the script? Because if you're not being intentional with it, chances are that inner dialogue has been quietly hijacked. Hijacked by old fears, by outside opinions, by years of subtle self-sabotage dressed up as realism. Every one of us has an inner voice, and most of it runs on autopilot, shaped by what we heard growing up, what society repeated, what failure whispered when things didn't go our way. But here's the truth most people never confront. If you don't learn to consciously shape that narrative, it will shape you. Every single day. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology did. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that reaction, it doesn't start with your circumstances. It starts in your internal monologue. It starts with the story you tell yourself, before the world ever gets a chance to say anything at all. So let me ask you, what's the first thing you say to yourself when you look in the mirror? Be honest, is it kind? Is it strong? Or is it judgment disguised as motivation? Is it that little voice whispering, "You're behind, you're not enough. You messed up again, here's what you need to understand." Self-talk isn't fluff. It's not spiritual wallpaper. It's not woo-woo noise. It's strategy. Carl Jung put it powerfully when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." That's exactly what happens when you let negative self-talk run unchecked. It becomes your internal operating system, and the worst part, you start to believe it's just who you are. But what if you flipped the script? What if the first voice you heard each morning wasn't doubt, but direction? You don't need to recite 100 affirmations in front of a vision board. You don't have to pretend to be someone you're not. All you need is one clear sentence, one line of power, out loud. Something that aligns with the version of you you're becoming. Something like, "I move with clarity. I don't respond to chaos. I get stronger every time I show up." These aren't cheesy mantras, they're anchors. And when you repeat them, they start becoming beliefs. Beliefs shape your identity. And identity shapes your behavior. Think about it. You would never speak to your closest friend the way you speak to yourself in your head. So why give yourself the worst version of your own voice? Every word you speak, even the ones no one else hears, they matter. They either lift you up or quietly drag you down. They either build momentum or reinforce doubt. There is no neutral, because your brain is always listening. And with enough repetition, it starts to believe what you feed it. Even if it isn't true yet, so why not use that power on purpose? Try it tomorrow. Don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait for your mood to catch up to your goals. Instead, stand in front of the mirror and speak something true. Even if it feels awkward. Even if your voice shakes a little, say, I am in control of how I move through this day. I keep promises to myself. You're not lying. You're leading. You're programming your mind to see you as someone worth following. And once your mind believes that, the world starts to believe it, too. But here's what most people do instead. They wake up and get pulled into a flood of noise. Tasks, notifications, obligations, a never-ending mental to-do list that grows by the minute. And because there's so much to do, they do none of it well. They put out fires, they react, they chase distractions, and by the time the sun sets, they're busy, but not better, they're exhausted, but not fulfilled. Because the real problem wasn't time, it wasn't energy, it was clarity. They never picked a win. They never chose the one thing that mattered enough to focus their energy. And here's the truth. When everything feels important, nothing actually is. The solution, it's simple but powerful. One moment of clarity, one decision, one line of intentional focus. So here's the move. Tomorrow, grab a pen, not your phone. Not a mental note you'll forget by noon. A pen, and write down one thing, one win, one meaningful action you'll take that day. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to matter. Send the proposal. Do the hard workout. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. This isn't a checklist. It's a commitment. It's a declaration. A psychological line in the sand that says, no matter what else happens today, this gets done. From a Stoic perspective, this is the heart of discipline, not reacting to life, but choosing your direction. Anchoring in your values. Focusing on what's essential. As Seneca said, if a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable. That written wind, that's your port, it's your direction. Even if everything else around you pulls in different directions. And that clarity, that single, focused action, it becomes your anchor. It gives your day weight, shape, and meaning. And psychologically, this small act taps into something much deeper. Carl Jung spoke of the power of integrating the unconscious into the conscious. He said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Writing down your one win, that's exactly what you're doing. You're pulling your deeper intentions, the things you actually care about, out of the fog and into form. It's no longer a hope. It's not just something you should do. You've declared it. You've made it visible. You've made it real. And your brain takes that seriously. So what happens next when you start showing up for those daily wins? The moment you put pen to paper, the moment you write down that one meaningful win, something changes. Your subconscious registers it as a target, a fixed point in your internal compass. And throughout the day, you'll feel it, a quiet, subtle pull guiding you toward it. That pull, that's momentum. And when you follow through, when you cross it off not as a task, but as a promise kept, you get more than a dopamine hit. You get proof. Proof that you can set a goal and honor it. Proof that you follow through. That's how confidence is really built. Not in grand moments of genius or peak motivation, but in the small, consistent promises you keep to yourself. And the best part, it stacks. Today's win makes tomorrow's commitment easier. It becomes a rhythm, a pattern, a way of moving through the world. Because you're not just writing down tasks anymore. You're writing identity. You're shaping a version of yourself that finished what they start. Who doesn't wait for motivation or ideal conditions? Who doesn't dance around discomfort, but leads their day with purpose? And here's the part we often avoid. There's always that one thing, you know the one I mean. The task that lingers in the background. Not loud, but draining. Not massive, but heavy. It sits with you while you scroll. It follows you into the shower. It whispers while you do other things, making everything feel just a little harder, a little heavier. It's not the size of the task that burdens you. It's the resistance you carry toward it. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The thing you're avoiding, it's not just an item on a list. It's your mental anchor. It weighs you down, even when everything else in your life seems to be moving. But instead of facing it, we circle it. We warm up with easy wins. We fill our morning with productive procrastination. Busy work that keeps us from doing the one thing that would actually create momentum. But if you've ever powered through that dreaded email, crushed that brutal workout first thing, or had that tough conversation before noon, you already know the secret. It sets you free. That task you resist the most, that's where your breakthrough lives. And from a Stoic perspective, this isn't just good productivity advice. It's foundational philosophy. Cleanthes wrote, "Lead me, Zeus, and you too, destiny, to wherever you have assigned me. I shall follow without hesitation." The Stoics didn't wait for the right emotional state to face challenges. They walked toward them. They knew that strength doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from meeting resistance directly. Because that's where clarity lives. That's where real peace begins. Not after the challenge, but through it. It's not about building toughness for its own sake. It's about building inner calm, the kind that shows up once the heavy thing is done. Carl Jung spoke of this same principle in a different way. He said, "What you resist not only persists, it grows." And that's what happens when we avoid the task, the conflict, the fear. We don't escape it. We amplify it, but when you confront it, especially early in the day, you take back that space in your mind, you reduce its power. And suddenly, what once felt like a shadow becomes manageable, clear, light, and what's left behind is a kind of focused calm. A stillness that no amount of journaling, planning, or productivity hacks can replicate. So how do you turn this into a lifestyle, not just a single win? This isn't about punishment, it's about freedom. Tackling the hardest thing first doesn't make your day harder. It unlocks it, because that task you keep avoiding, it's draining you quietly in the background, leaking tension, stealing clarity, robbing your energy without you even realizing it. But when you flip the script, when you face it head on, you take that tension and you turn it into fuel. And the ripple effect is real. You move through your next task faster, you speak with more confidence, you make decisions more clearly. Why? Because you already did the thing you least wanted to do. You prove to yourself that you're capable before 9 a.m., and that kind of self-trust, it shows up in everything, in how you carry yourself, in how others respond to you, in how you handle whatever else the day throws your way. So don't wait for motivation to magically appear. Don't fool yourself with the illusion of productivity checking off the easy stuff while the real challenge sits untouched. Pick the one thing that's been weighing on your chest, and do it first. No warm-up, no debate, no negotiation. Action before avoidance, and that rush you feel afterward. That's not just relief. That's clarity, that's alignment. That's your full energy finally released, no longer held hostage by hesitation. And the more often you start your day like this, the more your identity begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who avoids pressure, and start becoming someone who performs under it. Someone who doesn't flinch, someone who finishes. But here's where most people get stuck. Comfort. Comfort is sneaky. It whispers that ease is the goal, that avoiding resistance is wise, that staying in your safe little bubble, your habits, your routines, your predictability, means you're doing something right. But here's what comfort doesn't tell you. It slowly robs you of your edge. The more you protect yourself from discomfort, the more fragile you become, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Because growth doesn't come from what's easy, it comes from what stretches you. And no, you don't need your life to fall apart to grow. You don't need a crisis to evolve. What you need is a challenge, a chosen one you pick deliberately, while you still have the luxury of choice. That challenge could be simple but sharp. A cold shower that shocks your nervous system into alertness. An early, brutal workout when every cell in your body begs you to stay in bed. Reading something difficult and dense while TikTok is one swipe away. These aren't punishments, they're practice. You're training your brain, you're teaching yourself. I don't run from hard things. I do them on purpose. And that belief, that becomes your identity. In Stoic philosophy, this wasn't a trend, it was a way of life. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. Seneca encouraged people to expose themselves to discomfort regularly, to strip away luxury, to simplify their habits, not to suffer, but to train. He wrote. Set aside now and then a number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition I feared? Why? Because the fear of discomfort is often far worse than the discomfort itself. But once you choose it, once you step into it willingly, something inside you shifts. So what happens when discomfort is no longer your enemy, but your training ground? And here's what happens when you lean into discomfort. It loses its grip on you. Carl Jung echoed this truth through the lens of psychology. He believed that the parts of ourselves we avoid, our hidden fears, insecurities, and resistance, live in what he called the shadow. And he taught that true growth only comes when we integrate that shadow, not ignore it. He wrote, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. But that pain doesn't always come in the form of trauma or catastrophe. Sometimes it's much more subtle. The pain of choosing growth over ease, of facing a moment you desperately want to avoid, and doing the thing anyway. That is where resilience begins. Controlled discomfort isn't just about building grit. It's about building something deeper, trust in yourself. You begin to believe, based on real evidence, that you can handle pressure. That you don't need perfect conditions to take action. That you don't need to feel good to move forward. And that belief, that's a powerful place to live from. Because life won't always be gentle. It won't always give you warm-ups or second chances. But if you've been building your emotional armor in the quiet hours of the morning, you'll meet those moments with calm, not panic. There's something almost sacred about those early moments, isn't there? Before the notifications start, before the inbox explodes, before the world demands anything from you, there's a window, a short, precious space of time where your mind is still open, still clear, still untouched by the noise of the day. And most people waste that space. They scroll, they react, they feed their mind junk food and call it catching up. But what if you didn't? What if you treated that window like a sacred space for growth? Just 5 minutes, one page, one insight. Something that sharpens your mind before the world dulls it. You're not just preparing for the day. You're preparing your mind for the long game. Because in the world we live in, attention is currency. And the first thing you feed your mind each morning, it becomes the lens through which you see the rest of the day. Feed it chaos, and you'll think in chaos. Feed it purpose, and you'll act with purpose. That's why intentional learning in the morning is such a powerful ritual. It doesn't need to be a deep dive or a 30-minute masterclass. Just a few minutes of something meaningful. A paragraph that challenges your perspective. A quote that reframes your day. A lesson that quietly whispers, I'm still becoming. The Stoics understood this. They never separated learning from living. For them, wisdom wasn't a luxury, it was action. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journals not to impress anyone. Lead into final thoughts, call to action. He wrote to sharpen his thinking so he could lead with clarity. And in the final chapter of this video, we'll show you how to make that wisdom practical daily. Stay with me, this last piece ties it all together. That's why Marcus Aurelius wrote, not to sound wise, but to become wise. He understood that the first and most important battle each day wasn't with the world. It was within himself. Each morning, he wasn't just preparing for the day's external pressures. He was shaping his own mind, sharpening his values, strengthening his resolve. Writing was his way of training for life, learning was his armor. And Seneca echoed this with piercing clarity. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. Because to stop learning isn't just to pause growth. It's to start decaying, silently. Incrementally. Until one day, you wake up and realize you haven't changed in years. Carl Jung saw this too. In his lifelong study of the psyche, he believed that each person carries untapped potential. A deeper self, buried beneath years of conditioning, trauma, and fear. And the only way to uncover it, to seek it, to stay curious, to keep asking, what else am I capable of becoming? Jung wrote. Knowledge rests not upon truth alone, but upon error also. Meaning even when the learning feels uncomfortable, messy, or humbling, it's still pulling you forward, still stretching your limits, still building a mind that's harder to shake. That's what morning learning is for. It's not about cramming information or chasing trivia. It's about giving your mind something real to chew on. A workout for your perspective, a challenge for your assumptions. It builds adaptability, mental clarity, resilience not just for meetings or emails, but for life, because the person who learns daily, they don't cling to old narratives, they don't fear change. They pivot with purpose because they've trained for it. So tomorrow, before the noise creeps in, choose your first input with intention. Read a paragraph from a classic. Watch a 5-minute clip that challenges you. Listen to a mind that disagrees with yours. Take one note. Ask one question. How can I apply this today? This isn't about stuffing your brain with facts. It's about feeding your focus. And in a world drowning in distraction, clarity is a superpower. Now before we end, there's one last piece. Most people treat gratitude like an afterthought, a nice to have. Something you sprinkle on when life's already going well. But real gratitude, the kind that transforms you, it's not soft. It's not fluffy, it's fierce. Gratitude is a mindset you carry into the storm. It's how you find meaning when life feels uncertain. It's how you anchor yourself when everything else is shifting. Gratitude doesn't erase struggle, but it shifts the lens through which you face it. That's not delusion, that's strategy. The Stoics mastered this. They weren't walking around whispering mantras. They were warriors of perspective. Epictetus wrote, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." They trained themselves to notice what still works, to appreciate breath, choice, presence, not because they ignored pain, but because they knew. Where your attention goes, your power follows. Final lead-in suggestion. And in the final moments of this video, I want to show you how to put all of this clarity, calmness, intention, and gratitude into one simple, life-changing morning ritual. Ready? Let's bring it all together. Because that kind of gratitude, the real kind, isn't passive, it's powerful. It's not a soft whisper, it's a deliberate stance. It's something you choose, moment by moment. Carl Jung took this even deeper. He believed that the way we interpret our experiences matters more than the experiences themselves. He wrote, "The greatest and most important problems of life are all fundamentally insoluble. They can never be solved, only outgrown, and that's the key." Gratitude helps you outgrow your problems, not by magically erasing them, but by shifting your identity from the person who's stuck to the one who sees beyond the stuckness. That shift in identity, it's the beginning of real growth. And it starts by acknowledging what's already here. Not by ticking off boxes, but by feeling it. You don't just say, "I'm grateful," like a chore. You write it, you breathe it, you mean it. You get still for 30 seconds. And you say, "I'm grateful for this chance. I'm grateful I woke up. I'm grateful I've made it through worse. And I'm still standing." And if it's a rough morning, even better, that's when it matters most. Because gratitude is easy when life is smooth. But when you can find it in the middle of a mess, that's when it transforms you. And something incredible happens when you start your day that way. Your energy shifts. You don't walk into the world guarded or bitter. You move with openness, with strength, with grounded purpose. You're not trying to control everything. You're noticing what you can control. And that calm clarity, it flows into how you speak, how you lead, how you handle pressure. Gratitude doesn't make you softer, it makes you stronger. It anchors your mind before it spirals into what's missing, and centers it on what truly matters. Your mornings are more than just routines. They're declarations of who you are, of who you're becoming, because the way you rise says everything about how you move through the world. So tomorrow, rise with intention, move with clarity, speak with power, and choose every single day to be the one who leads, not the one who waits. Don't drift into your day. Design it, lead it, own it. And if this spoke to you, don't stop here. There's more waiting. Watch one of the suggested videos on your screen. It might be the next step you didn't even know you were ready for. And as always, thank you for being part of Stoic Journal Path. We'll see you in the next one.